most of the asteroids in the solar system are found in a belt or a big donut between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. So we call that the asteroid belt. And not all asteroids are there. There are some asteroids that are orbiting out beyond Jupiter. There's some asteroids that are orbiting inside the orbit of Mars. There are some asteroids whose orbit cross that of the inner planets, like Earth. And so this is a map of the inner solar system right here from the Minor Planet Center. Remember I said professional astronomers refer to these as minor planets. The International Astronomical Union actually operates something called the Minor Planet Center. It's operated out of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics in Boston, Massachusetts, but the Minor Planet Center keeps track of all these things. The green dots are locations of asteroids that are main belt asteroids. That means they just orbit out there in the asteroid belt somewhere. The red dots are asteroids whose orbits cross the orbit of Earth. And notice there are a bunch of asteroids in there. In fact, those circles you see, the big outer circle on this diagram, this big outer circle, that's the orbit of Jupiter. That's Mars's orbit, that's Earth's orbit, that's Venus's orbit, and that right there is Mercury's orbit. And you see there's a bunch of these asteroids out there. Now, most of them probably originate somewhere in the asteroid belt, and then something disrupts their orbit out here, and you disrupt the orbit, and they dive in closer. Okay, that's why you don't get as many asteroids inside the orbit of Mercury. Now, that picture right there was done in 2015. That one was 2016, and you notice that everything shifted a little bit. There's an interesting thing, this blue haze that's out here, okay, in the outer part, those are also asteroids that are orbiting co-orbital with Jupiter. That means that Jupiter, which is right there, Jupiter, which is located, right about there, okay? And so these things are located, behind and in front of Jupiter and its orbit. And so that's an interesting sort of thing. We'll talk about those later. Okay. And then there they are here. Once again, Jupiter's moved down to here, so that the asteroids that were up here are now down here. The ones that were here moved out to there. And you can see everything moving around a little bit. This was 2018. And there's more discoveries, so you see more red dots out there. Now, again, some of these have orbits that are very elliptical. You say, wait a minute, I said red dots cross the orbit of Earth, and you got some of these red dots way out here. Well, they dive in close and then go back out. Okay. And so that's what's going on there. Now, the good news is that Kepler's laws still hold, and so when they're close to the sun, they're moving really fast, and when they get out here, they're slow. So they spend most of their time out here. So that's a good thing. Okay. Bad thing, they're going really fast when they're in close. That makes the impact worse if they happen to run into something. Well, unfortunately, one of those things in there is Earth. Okay. The asteroids that do cross the orbit of Earth have special names. They're either Apollo or Aten asteroids. One of the first ones was the asteroid Apollo, discovered in 1932. Its orbit crossed that of Earth, and this was a big shock. If the semi-major axis is bigger than 1 AU, which means they're most of the time farther from the sun than Earth, they dive in closer, that's an Apollo asteroid. If they happen to be a semi-major axis less than 1 AU, in other words, they spend most of the time closer to the sun than Earth, but they drift further out and cross Earth's orbit, then that is an Aten asteroid. As of October of 2020, there are over 1,800 Aten asteroids, and there's almost 12,000 Apollo asteroids. I know, I actually downloaded the list and supported because I couldn't find any list of how many there were. So I downloaded the list, imported it into Excel, and then basically just ran down the list and counted asteroids. At least Excel counted the asteroids. And so there are almost 12,000 Apollo asteroids, almost 2,000 Aten asteroids. That means that there are about 13,700 asteroids whose orbits are confirmed to cross the 1 AU mark. In other words, they cross the orbit of Earth. Now, good news, bad news. Good news, some of them cross the 1 AU mark at a different orientation than Earth's orbit, so the chance of running into Earth is almost none unless something changes the orbit of the asteroid. Bad news, not all of them do that. More bad news. If they pass in the general vicinity of Earth, as Earth is there, even if they make a clear miss, Earth's gravity disturbs the orbit of these things, and then the orbit shifts, which means that they can possibly increase the likelihood of an impact later on. That's a zooming in plot of the innermost part of the solar system. There have been a bunch of really close approaches, in fact. So as of October of 2020, this is a list of the 18 closest approaches. Now notice the first handful of them on the list. The first 5 on the list, or the 4 on the list up here, the closest approach is 6,400 kilometers. Okay, this is the closest approach to the center of the Earth. Okay, now some of these are pretty close. There was actually one that happened right before the fall semester 2020 started, and that one passed 9,300 kilometers from the center of the Earth. And so that's actually lower than a lot of our satellites. It actually passed under a bunch of satellites. And so that was, in August of 2020. Fancy that. Near miss of an asteroid in 2020. I mean, it's 2020. It's really a surprise it didn't actually hit. And so there's another one here, earlier in 2020, near miss. Another one earlier in 2020, near miss, right there. So there have been several near misses here. Okay, so this is the distance from the center of the Earth. Now, notice the first 4 came within 6,400 kilometers of the center of the Earth. Now, why 4 of them within that distance? Because that actually, we'll get to there later, okay, but the moon is about 384,000 kilometers away. As of last year, I didn't get a chance to run through the entire list since last year as to what happened. But as of last year, there were 438 asteroids that came closer than the moon. And I'm pretty sure that list is well over 500 now. Geosynchronous satellites orbit 42,000 kilometers from the Earth. As of October of last year, there are 28 that have come closer than that. I know there's more than that because I actually found several more that were closer than that. Did not add that to the list, but that list that came closer to geosynchronous satellites is probably like 35 or 36 now. Just from the ones we discovered since October of 2019. Okay. Remember, I said that 4 of those things came within 6,400 kilometers of the Earth. Why is that? Yeah, 6,400 kilometers. 4 of them came within that distance of the Earth. That's the distance of the center of the Earth, but the radius of the Earth is 6,400 kilometers. That means they hit the surface of the Earth. They impacted. So we've had 4 impacts there, and 3 of these asteroids have come less than 1 radius from the Earth's surface. And so that's just the ones we know of here that we saw and we were able to track. Okay, 4 of them have impacted. Okay, now the radius of the Earth is 6,400. The definition of a potentially hazardous asteroid is one that's out there that is at least 100 meters across. Now, they can be smaller than that, and if they run into Earth, they're still bad. You're going to have an asteroid that's only like 5 to 10 meters across, and it could hit with the force of an atomic bomb. Okay, that's not really considered potentially hazardous. Okay, it might be hazardous if you're under it, but potentially hazardous are these bigger ones that would have regional devastation. It would hit and devastate an entire continent or more. Possibly wreck the climate of the planet or something. So that'd be something that's larger than about 100 meters across. They have orbits that come within 0.05 AU of Earth. Okay, and so that means that if something were to disrupt them a little bit, they have the potential for running into us and doing really, really bad damage. As of October 1st of 2020, there were cataloged over 2,000 of these potentially hazardous asteroids. Okay. So, next thing we want to talk about is things actually running into Earth. Not just potentially, but actually hitting Earth.